Here I am. Okay. Jeez. I am like dying here. This is crazy. All right. I forgot to turn on my camera and mic when I started the stream, and then it was just madness. Anyway, let me get things set up here. Come on back down here. Okay, there we go. All right. Well, welcome to the Night Owl Writers Room with Rich Hosick. That's me. And this is just basically a place to hang out late at night. You're like, working on something and you want to break and you want to check out what I'm working on. This is the place to come. If you're curious about how someone goes about producing a fiction podcast, this is the place to be. If you want to talk about something on your mind, if you've got a story you want to work out, reach out to me. This is the place to do that too. It's a writer's room. It's not just my room. It's the Night Owl Writers Room, right? I want to make this a community. I want to make this something that people check into every once in a while or tune into regularly or make a part of their late night routine as we're all kind of like trying to wind down from the day. But you've got those last paragraphs of words you have to get on the page and make that work. So let me fill you in on where I'm at. I am remastering one of my old episodes. So I had a bunch of stories that I recorded way back in 2021, 2022, 2022. Yeah, 2022. Yeah, back in 2022, where I was just getting started, right? I didn't quite know exactly what I was going to do or how I was going to do it, but I was like having fun doing it and writing stories, recording them, producing them. And this one was one that I had done when I was just starting to add sound effects to the stories. So, where to go? So, as I was putting together the audiobook for The Charlatan's Conundrum and Other Bedtime Stories for Insomniacs, available at Amazon.com, um, I noticed that some of the stories I had from the past were not as up to snuff with the other ones I had done, and I had previously remastered some other stories to bring them up to date. Um, um, Mostly like the title story, The Charlatan's Conundrum and stuff. So I have a list of stories that I'm going to remaster here. And I was just looking at this one the other day because this is one that I was sort of showing you guys as an example of a humorous story. And here we go. Let me get this set up here. There we go. And then over there, take this over here. So what I'm doing right now is I am going through the audio recording I made earlier tonight. And I am, geez, can't get this working here. And I am just checking it to make sure I've got everything correct. There's no mistakes. All the levels are good and so forth. So I'm going to continue doing that, and then we'll start adding the sound effects and stuff. I originally was going to do this inside the file where I had the original recording, but then I just updated my Audacity recently, and the settings are just a mess. And there's bugs in it, and I'm just kind of ticked off about the whole thing. I mean, I've been using it for almost 3 years, but maybe time for me to get something professional. I hate to. I don't want to do a subscription thing. I don't like that. Don't like paying over month for that kind of stuff. There's some things, I do that for, but they're the things I use every day. However, this is becoming something I use every day, so I may have to change my mind on that. We'll see. We'll see. All right. So let me share my desktop over here so you guys can see what I'm working on. Okay, there we go. And here we go. All right. So on the left here is the audio track for the story, and then on the right is the story. I'm going to bump this over a little bit here, bring the size of the text down so I can see it more easily. There we go. That's a little bit better. And basically what I do is I'm just playing it back and watching what I wrote, making sure it lines up, and then also listening for any, like, really bad takes. Sometimes, I don't say it the way I wanted to say it, or the levels are too low or something, or the cat was making noise behind me or something like that. So, let's pick up where I left off here, and, of course, yeah, if you guys have any questions, jump in. If you have any comments, jump in. If you ever wanna be a part of the show, reach out to me on X, and we'll work that out. Alright, let's get going here. I wanna try and get through this part of it at least before we end tonight. So when that differential is bridged, it has to go somewhere. Are you going to believe some silly action movie or an actual theoretical physicist? Susie asked. Worm stared her down. Susie stared back even harder. Where am I? Worm blinked first. It's not silly, he said in his defense. Susie smiled and continued plugging various components into each other. You know, she said, it also doesn't make sense for someone who changes their own past to retain the memories from their previous timeline. In fact, it doesn't make any sense for them to return. So here I've got breath noises. You hear that? Timeline. In fact, so I've got this little plug-in here where I can try and diminish those. Let's see if that works here. It's timeline. In fact, it doesn't make it gone, magically gone. Let's see. I think there's one here too. To retain them, let's clean up this one a little bit. Go from here to about here. Breath control is their own past to retain the memories. Okay, so that I actually screwed up because past to retain past to re. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna leave that one as it is. Their own past to retain the memories from their previous timeline. In fact, it doesn't make any sense for them to return to their new present. They would simply cease to exist, and the alternate version of themselves would take their place. Not necessarily. I'm going to take out a little bit of this gap here. Some timing was a little off. Not necessarily, Worm replied. The person who was in the timeline before could be the one who ceases to exist. Wow. So Van Damme is. Again, I'm going to take out some of that gap. Is to exist. Wow. So Van Damme essentially killed the version of himself that was leading a perfectly happy life so that the other version that had caused the death of his family could alleviate his guilt. Nice. Do not mock Van Damme, Worm warned. I'm just saying. Either way, the movie is horribly flawed. Real time travel isn't anything like that. That's because there is no real time travel. Now remember you said that when you want me to take you back in time to challenge Ken Jennings in the Jeopardy Tournament of Champions. Worm grunted, then returned his attention to his book. I got up to take a closer look at what Susie was doing. So, if you have a time machine, how come you haven't traveled back in time to buy a lottery ticket or something? I asked. It's not finished yet, she replied. What do you need? I don't know. You don't know? I asked, surprised that Susie would admit there was actually something she didn't know. Going pretty well so far. I have no idea what it needs, but I'm 99% done. Flux capacitor? I suggested. Susie shrugged. Could be. There's no such thing as a flux capacitor, Worm said from behind the pages of his book. Susie ignored him. I'll figure it out eventually, she said confidently. Why are you working on it now if you don't have all the components you need? I asked. Well, when I do figure it out, I'm going to finish the machine, travel back in time, I think I heard her breath here. Let me go back. Well, when I do figure it out, I'm going to let me try breath control on that. Figure it out. I'm going to finish the. So there's like this little hiccup here. Let's see if I can just cut that out. Why is my mouse not reacting here? There we go. So right there, I'm going that little glitch there. I'm just going to see if I can just cut that out. Bring it back. When I do figure it out, I'm going to finish the machine. It's good. Travel back in time and give myself the part so I can use it in the future to travel back in time. Oh, for Pete's sake, and a box of snakes, Worm said loudly. Now I know you're messing with me. You can't build a time machine by expecting you'll solve the problem in the future and sending yourself the solution in the past so that you have it in the future. That's not even a paradox. It's just ridiculous, says the man with 0 PhDs. Susie replied casually. I don't need some All right, there's breath control here. Let's try that. And casually. I don't need some fancy Again, there's like a I don't need hear that? I, I don't I I All right, so from here to here. Okay, so I'm gonna try this. So that's that part. Let's see what this sounds like. Copy that and paste it over here. Let's see how that sounds. Julie. I don't need some fancy letters after my name to know what. So that's just something I've learned trial and error, right? Um, it's it looks like there's these little bumps and stuff in there, but sometimes it's just silence. It's room tone that's kind of like accentuated for some reason, and it's canceled out by the other track or something. It's just very strange. But when I get to a place where I can see that happening, what I'll do is I'll grab some room tone from another space that where I'm not talking and just paste it over where I hear something that I don't want in the track and just paste it in. I don't need some fancy letters after my name to know what you're saying is complete and utter nonsense. To a small minded person who doesn't understand how to disconnect cause and effect, you can't have the effect before. Okay, again, there's like here we taking a breath there. Fact. You can't have the effect before the cause, Worm shouted. If you say so, Susie replied, continuing connecting the various parts of her time machine together. Worm was fuming. Susie gave me a surreptitious wink. When do you plan on giving yourself this mysterious missing part? I asked. Susie snapped the final pieces of her device together, then looked at her watch. Now would be good. All of us, Worm included, looked at the door to the office there's expectantly. Another breath here. Let me Nothing. So I've gotten a lot better at my breathing, but I still included. Looked at the door to the office have a little expectantly. Breath sound in there. Nothing happened. Ha! Worm exclaimed. I knew it. I knew you were messing with me. One here I heard. Knew it. I knew you were messing with me. He slammed his book shut and slammed it on his desk. Yes, I was right. Slammed it on his desk. Yes, I was right. You were wrong. He did a sort of a dance, more like a jig, around the office. I was right. You were wrong. There's again. Around the office. I was right. You were wrong, he's saying. There's no such thing as time travel. Oh, there's a big one there. Wrong, he's saying. There's no such thing as time travel. He danced his way over to the door. Did you really think I would fall for that? That I would believe that some future version of you was going to show up and hand over some magical part that would light up your mythical. All right. So I get rid of that one. Magical part that would light up your mythical time machine? How stupid do you think I am? Worm asked. A second Susie appeared in the doorway. About as stupid as a sea cucumber with a lobotomy, she answered. Worm was so surprised he tripped over his own feet and tumbled to the ground. He recovered and got up. acting as if he meant to do that. But how? This, Worm sputtered. You're late. The original, not too much of a gap there. I'll clean that up. Worm sputtered. You're late, the original Susie said to her future self. This watch you bought us is slow, future Susie replied. Did you bring it? Now Susie asked. Of course. I'm not as addle-brained as our friend here, future Susie said, nodding in Worm's direction. This is impossible, he said, taking off his glasses and cleaning them. But when he put them back on, there were still two Susies. Is one of those books on your desk a dictionary? Because maybe you need to. All right. Breath sound in there. Clean that up. Dictionary. Because maybe you need to look up the definition of that word. I do not think it means what you think it means, future Susie said, quoting Mandy Patinkin from The Princess Bride, my favorite movie. What is this? Worm asked suspiciously. Some kind of holographic projection? He reached out and touched future Susie. She was solid. He touched her arm, her shoulder, her hair. Careful, now Susie warned. That's the most physical contact he's had with a woman in years. He might think you two are engaged if you let him keep doing that. Worm looked back at now Susie and rolled his eyes. For your information, I had a date last week. Really? What day? What was her name? Remember, I have a time machine now. I can go back and check, she said. Worm swallowed. I'm not going to tell you. That's private information, he insisted. Was her name Was her name Bet? Future Susie asked. So now the gaps here, this is just by ear, right? So I'm listening to this. I'm going, he insisted. Was her name Bet? And that's where I think it should come in. So when I see it go too far, I'm like expecting to hear the dialogue come in and it doesn't. I'll clear out some of that space between there. Was her name Bet? Sounds more natural. Future Susie asked. Bet you spent the night alone watching a Jean-Claude Van Damme marathon. Now Susie added. Both Susies laughed. The same exact five-note chuckle that ended in a smirk. Future Susie pulled out. All right, so that's another big gap there. I'm going to pull some of that out. Future Susie pulled out a small circuit board with a mysterious glowing crystal set in its heart from her pocket. In its heart from her pocket. It's a completely different word. In its center. In its heart from her. So this is where I'm tempted to like change the word in the story to this, but I've already published the book. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to have to fix this. But ugh, I've got this situation here with recording while I'm streaming, and I'm not going to be able to do it. So let me make a note of this here. It's going to do a Control B. Yep, should be center. Okay. So I'll just make a note of that and come back to it after we finish the stream. All right. One-time crystal ready to use, she said to now Susie. She started walking toward her younger self. Wait, stop, Worm yelled. Don't touch her. We all looked over at Worm. His eyes were filled with panic. The time differential. Don't let her touch you. Don't be ridiculous, Worm, now Susie said. This is not a time cop. I'm not going to explode or meld with myself if we touch. That's just a cinematic fantasy. Are you willing to take that chance? He asked. Now Susie and future Susie exchanged a look, then shrugged. Future Susie tossed the time crystal to now Susie, who caught it in midair. She turned it over in her hands admiringly. I did a good job on this. Yes, you did. Now, can you plug it in so I can justify existing in this timeline? Future Susie asked. Of course. Now Susie replied. But where did it come from? Worm asked. I brought it, future Susie explained. You're giving her a device that already existed in the future so she can use it now. But when was it actually built? Okay, that was a big breath there. See if I can clean that one up. Now, but when was it actually built? Right now, Susie replied. No, that's impossible. That doesn't make any sense. You didn't build it. You can't just pluck things out of the future without them having an origin at some point in the past. Right. Now Susie agreed. Okay, so that's a little bit of a break there. Past. So this is right where I expect the dialogue to hear, right where I stopped it. So I'm going to trim out that space between there. So now when I hear it in the past, right. Now Susie agreed. And now is my future self's past. I don't understand why this is. I don't. I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't understand. So I don't. Let's see if I can clear that voice noise out of there. Past. I don't understand why this is so difficult for you to comprehend. It's happening, so obviously it's possible. I see that it's happening, Worm agreed. But he looked in my direction. Does any of this make any sense to you? Well, like she said, it's happening right now, so obviously it must be what she says it is. Worm shook his head. No, no, this can't be real. I must be dreaming. That's it. I'm still at home in bed. This is a dream. Of course. He seemed relieved. Phew. For a second there, I thought I was losing my mind. He laughed. I need to remember this one and tell you guys about it when I get into work. Future Susie reached over to Worm and pinched him as hard as she could on the arm. Ow! He exclaimed. Still think you're dreaming, genius? She asked. Worm's relief evaporated, and dread crept into his expression. I'm not dreaming? He asked, rubbing the spot of his arm future Susie had pinched. Maybe I'm the one dreaming, I offered. Worm ran his fingers through his hair, muttering to himself, trying to come up with some rationale that would mend his shattered world view. Well, thanks for stopping by, now Susie said. No problem, future Susie replied. She crossed over to her past self, arms outstretched. Now Susie smiled and opened her own arms to accept her future self's embrace. No, don't! Worm shouted. He ran out of the office, screaming, Evacuate the building! Everyone, get out! His voice faded as he got further and further away. So when I'm doing dialogue there that's at a shout, I usually just sit back from the mic and shout. And usually I'll if I just try it a couple times at different distances, it comes out the way I want it to. But on this one, I actually added a little bit of a fade out on there as well. I took it here and faded out. I may bring it and fade it out a little bit more when I get to the final production, but I think it's good for now. The two Susies hugged. Nothing happened. They didn't meld together into an unstable blob. They didn't explode. Do you want to introduce me? I asked. Now Susie stepped back, sharing a conspiratorial smile with herself. Jack, this is my sister, Lucy. Lucy offered me her hand. Oops, nice to meet you, Jack. Lucy offered. So here's another place where I've got to do a dialogue here. Lucy offered her hand to me. Okay. Nice to meet you, Jack. Twin sister, I assume. I didn't even know you had any siblings at all. Yeah, we don't tell people. Makes it easier to pull pranks like this. Haha. I admire your dedication. You're like Christian Bale in that movie, The Prestige. Yeah, we told Christopher Nolan he could use the idea as long as he never gave us credit. You know Christopher Nolan? I asked. All right, so I heard something pop in there. You know Christopher? You hear that? See if I can find it. Christopher Christopher Nolan? Christopher Nolan? So I can see it there. I don't think there's any way I can fix that. Christopher. Sometimes there's like a little spike and I can get rid of it. In this case here, I need to re-record that again. So I'm going to make a note. and I'll go back and lay that in again. Probably that whole segment. You know Christopher Nolan? Yeah, that
asked.
bugs me. I can't leave that.
Not as far as you know,
Lucy answered. She turned to Susie. By the way, you're still on for going to that charity thing with my husband this Saturday, aren't you? I'll be there. Totally worth it to see Worm running out of the building, thinking he was going to die in a time explosion. Okay, there's some breath sounds in here. Building, thinking. Sometimes this works really great.
building, thinking he was going to
That time it
die
worked
in
good.
a time explosion. No sex with him this time,
Lucy warned.
I won't make that mistake again.
Susie promised.
Later.
Lucy looked me over.
This one is cuter than you let on,
She said to her sister.
120,
Susie replied. That's a little bit there. I have to cut a little bit out of that.
120.
Susie replied. Lucy nodded knowingly.
Still,
She added, looking me over lasciviously. She strutted out of the office. I turned to Susie. 120? I asked.
your IQ. We don't sleep with anyone under 150. Sorry.
I shrugged. Good to know.
Susie swept.
In another place where too long of a break. Good to know. Good to know. All right, hear that little click there? This one, I think I can see it. You see that little spike? Good to know. Good to know. Good to good to good to know. Okay, there it is. So I can see that this little spike here. And what's really cool about this is if I can see it, I can take jeez. Good to I can do something about it, right? So I'm trying to center this here so I can be more precise. All right. So there we go. So there's that little spike. It comes out as a little click. I don't know where that came from. You can see it's kind of laid over on that. So what I'm going to do is just grab this part, this waveform here, and cut it out. Oops, let me try it again. Start it where it crosses there and grab it when it crosses there. Okay, we'll see how that sounds. Good to know. Okay, so there's still the second half of the click there. So I'm going to take that one out too. I'm going to come here and take that out. See how it sounds. Good to know. See, it's gone now. So I got rid of that click by removing a couple microseconds from there.
Sleep with anyone under 150. Sorry.
I shrugged. Good to know. I still have
Susie
something.
swept.
Good to know. Good to know. You hear that? Good. There's another one right there. See that little noise right at the beginning? Let's get rid of that. Good to know. Okay, so now it's good to know. It's clean now.
Susie swept all the pieces of her time machine into the box she had brought them in.
Sometimes it's easier just to re-record it, but sometimes I like to say, "Oh, just let me see if I can just clean it up." And it's weird because you can take out those little tiny fractions of a second, little hundredths of a second, and it won't make any difference to your ears. But it does remove that little defect that causes the little clicking sound going on there. All right.
Then sat in front of her computer and started scanning emails while browsing the web.
I returned my attention to the jumble puzzle on the comics page. I chuckled to myself as I read the clue. A martial arts vehicle blocking a river is called a. I filled the letters in the space provided. Van Dam. Thank you for listening to The Time Cop Paradox, written especially for the Bedtime Stories for Insomniacs Fiction Podcast by Rich Hosek. All right. So there we go. So that's all I'm going to do for right now because I want to continue the stream. But that basically gives me the audio track for this. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it back over. So here is the old one here. Let's see if I can. So here it is. And then here's the old audio track. And take this. I tried to. Yeah, never mind. So this has like an old introduction and stuff like that. And the other big problem was that I spoke too quickly. So if I look at this one here, it comes in at 15 minutes for the whole thing, whereas this one clocks in at 1948. So I was speaking so fast in that first version that it literally was 5 minutes of audio that was being compressed because I was speaking so fast. And in this one, there are some spots where I speak fast, particularly in the dialogue. I, I don't I don't get too concerned about dialogue that comes out fast because I can attribute that to the character, right? But the narration I need to have at a certain sort of metronomic pace so that it's coming out at a certain pace and people hear it. And then when they speed it up, it'll be at a faster pace. So while they're walking, they'll hear it. And it really makes a big difference for that. So over the years, I've been working on slowing my pace so that I'm more in line with what a traditional audiobook reader does in terms of how fast they read. So practice makes perfect, and the more I do it, the better it gets, the more easier it gets. Same with the breath sounds. I still haven't fixed the mouth sounds, so I've got those plugins to help me with both of those. And I think it's coming out okay. All right. So the other thing that I'm working on these days that I need to really spend some time on is my next novel, The 10th Ride. So I thought I'd spend some time going through that right now. And usually what I do at this stage is I'm reading it out loud to myself. I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. So here we go. So in this part of the book here, let's see that he is here. Wait, let me give you the premise for those of you who are walking in the middle of this. Guy who's been selling auto parts for a company as a salesman gets called into his boss's office and is laid off unexpectedly, and he goes home. His wife, he's afraid to go home. He goes to a local bar, gets drunk with his coworkers and other people who got fired, and eventually heads home wasted after ignoring hundreds of text messages from his wife and so forth. And then when he gets there, she's upset, and he says, "I got fired," and it really hurts his manhood. He's like the kind of guy who's like he's always provided for his family, and now he can't, and he doesn't know what the future holds. This is the only place he's ever worked. But when he was coming home with the Uber driver, the guy had said, "Hey, I was in a similar situation. I lost my job. This is, but great way to make some bucks. If you're interested, use my referral code. We'll split the fee and blah, blah, blah." So after he adjusts to life after work and stuff like that, he remembers the Uber thing and signs up for it, gets his car inspected, and starts driving. And of course, it doesn't start out as they promise. You're not getting these like $100 rides and stuff like that. This is actually a lot of the Uber stuff in this story is based on time I spent driving Uber. So that's what kind of inspired this story. The first story in this book series, a thriller series, the Dead Kids Club, that was from a dream of mine, and the guy in that job works for a company that distributes sporting goods. And so both of these distributing sporting goods, distributing auto parts. I used to work for a food distributor, so I'm kind of like in that area of wholesale distribution, and so I'm drawing on that experience to do this. So, but this story is not so much. So he was a salesman at the company, whereas in the first story, the Dead Kids Club, he's um, systems system administrator, which is what I started out as, and so I just pulled on a lot of my experience working with data centers and migrations and software deployments and all that kind of stuff, which are integral to the story. Uh, the killing I haven't done before. That's new. Um, so in this story, the Uber driving is what I pulled from my life. And so actually some of the rides I describe in the book are things that actually happened to me, which is kind of cool. And this is one of them. All right. So let's see here. So he picks up a couple. They're drunk. She starts eating food in the back seat and getting it all over his upholstery and carpeting. She slides across the back seat, leaving her hot dog behind. "Will be 2 minutes," Adams promises. "I'll be here," Dave assures him. "Thanks, man." "No worries." Adam and the girl walk up to a house with a wrought iron fence around it. He pounds on the door, and a moment later, someone opens it and they disappear inside. Dave hits the gas and accelerates down the street. When he's 2 blocks away, he ends the ride, then continues on back toward a major street. He drives for about a half a mile before he finds a 24-hour drugstore and pulls into the parking lot. He comes to a stop, turns on the dome light, and peers into the back seat. There's a half-eaten hot dog on the upholstery. Balled up foil and napkins litter the floor, along with puddles of bright green relish tinged with yellow mustard. So, bright green relish is a Chicago thing. At some point during the introductory videos Dave had watched on being an Uber driver, there was a section on what to do if someone made a mess in your car. He taps through a few screens and finds the one where he can report a passenger mess. It instructs him to take pictures, so he gets out, opens the back seat, and snaps a couple of photos of the food on the seat as well as the floor. He notices too that they have left behind a baseball cap. He picks it up and flings it across the parking lot like a frisbee. Dave fills out the report on the duo, explaining that they left food on the seats and floor and they were visibly intoxicated and on their way to getting high as well. He submits the complete form, then locks up the car and heads into the drugstore. So he submits the completed form, locks up his car and heads into the drugstore. And here, this is going to be one word. This is the kind of stuff I like using the grammar checker for. So I've got this app running here. Let me see it. Yeah, there's. So this is my pro writing aid that highlights this stuff. A lot of this stuff was, passive verbs. Okay. I use a lot of passive verbs. Trying to fix them all, it just doesn't sound natural to me. So I leave a lot of this stuff. Now this one here, when I get it flagged like this, I may take a look at it, see if I can tighten it up or change anything, but we'll see. Fortunately, there is an automotive goods aisle that has a foaming upholstery cleaner, some air freshener, and some microfiber cleaning cloths. I need to say some again, and microfiber cleaning cloths. He pays nearly $10 for the supplies, trying to remember if he even made that much on the ride he just gave. Back at the car, he scoops up the mess and tosses it into the plastic bag he paid an extra 10 cents for and dumps it into a public waste bin. A public waste bin. He uses one of the microfiber cloths to dab at the stain, flicking away any remaining solid bits and soaking up as much of the liquids as possible. He shakes up the foaming upholstery cleaner. It's similar to something he used to clean up a mess one of the girls made when they were younger. In that case, it was vomit, primarily consisting of Cheerios and Pop Tarts. This time it is much nastier. This time it's much nastier. I'm gonna contract that. This time it's much nastier, but he's worried about the mustard stain in particular. He sprays a circle of the foam onto the fabric and uses the stiff brush built into the cap to scrub at the stain, allowing the cleaner to soak into the cloth. Then does the same to the portions of the carpet that were messed up as well, that were soiled. Okay, so this is like just a long sentence here, right? So the foam and stiff brush to cap the cloth. Period. Then, comma, he does the same to the portions of the carpet that were soiled. I need to say as well. Dave lets the foam sit until it appears to dry out. Once he's satisfied the product has done its work, he swipes it away with a clean microfiber cloth. To his relief, the fabric is clear of any stain. A little damp, but nothing visible remains. A chime comes from his phone. It's an alert from the Uber app. He opens it and finds that he has been reimbursed for $100 for his cleaning expenses. The amount surprises him, but he is not going to argue. And this actually happened to me. I like put in a report. I spent like, 15 or $20 on stuff and it's like, "Oh, okay. Go ahead. Puke in my car." He finishes giving him nearly $200 for the night. He finishes cleaning the car, returns the floor mats to the back seat, and packs up the cleaning supplies into the trunk. Hopefully, he won't need to use them again, but it's nice to know that if he does, he'll get a nice little bonus. Dave starts his car and drives home through the desolate early morning streets. Okay, let's go to the next one here. All right, so I made a comment here. All right, Dave tries hard to keep with the to keep up with the weekend demands of the girls, but Carol catches him yawning all day. Catches him yawning. He's gotten all of 10 hours of sleep over the last 2 nights, and it's catching up to him. He decides he's going to skip driving today and offers to take the girls to the movies. Carol agrees, welcoming the opportunity for some peace and quiet, especially since the movie they want to see is one of those animated 3D movies they love, but that make her dizzy to watch. Putting a hyphen in there. Some peace and quiet. Okay, and peace. See, I don't know why it suggests peace and quiet. It says uh, since the since the movie they want to see is one of those animated 3D things. See, I'm bothered by the use of the word movie so close together, especially since what they want to see, since what they want to see is one of those animated 3D movies they love, but that make her dizzy to watch. They love, but which make her dizzy. All right. Can we get popcorn? Lizzie asks the second they walk into the theater. Yes, Dave answers. Can I get my own? No. But Vicky doesn't like butter on hers. That's because it's not butter. It's an artificial butter substitute. It's gross. I like it, Lizzie declares. See me doing a little sassiness with my head. Um, one popcorn with a tray so you can butter some of it, and one drink with 2 straws. I don't want to drink her spit, Vicky says. She blows bubbles in the soda. Lizzie, no bubbles. Why can't I get my own? Because Dad can't afford it. It's economical and non negotiable, Dave adds, cutting off the conversation. Once they have their concessions, the ritual begins. Lizzie dumps half the popcorn into a cardboard tray and liberally douses it with the butter and various flavored salts. Vicky leaves her half plain. At the drink dispenser, Lizzie concocts a melange of carbonated flavors that makes Vicky crinkle her nose. Dave extracts a water bottle from a pocket in his cargo pants and hands it to his older daughter. Thanks, she says to her dad, and follows Lizzie down the hall into the heart of the multiplex. Dave tags along, allowing himself one of the yawns he'd been suppressing so far to almost unhinge his lower jaw. So far, which almost unhinges his lower jaw. And then just reading about yawning is making me yawn. Once inside the theater, the kind with the fully reclining seats, Dave raises his feet, lowers his head, and almost instantly falls asleep. What feels like a moment later, Lizzie shakes him. Wake up, Dad, it's over. Dave opens his eyes, peers through the 3D glasses to see the credits rolling in parallax up the screen. Come on, she urges. Dave raises his chair out of its reclining position and follows the girls out of the theater. Back home, Dave hands off the girls to Carol, who enlists them in helping her with dinner, or more specifically, dessert, while he sits down in front of the computer, checks his email, and scans the job boards. Okay, so this is my question here. So I think earlier I had gotten the computer broken. So this is one of the things I had done with the story to sort of make it um, to add more jeopardy to it, right? So, fortunately, I don't remember where this was, so I'm gonna have to take my note and work with that. So I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna say, oh, it says silent computer. He remembers that. Did he drop it off at the Best Buy? I'm trying to remember. I was probably gonna have him do that. He dropped it off with the Geek Squad guys at the Best Buy. So instead, checked his email on his phone. Okay. After dinner, they tune into a couple of TV shows they like to watch as a family, and Dave does his best to keep his eyes open, to remain awake. Come on, time to get ready for bed, Carol tells the girls, who predictably beg for just one more hour. But she's unmoving on the topic of school night bedtime and shoos them upstairs. Dave climbs out of the chair, stretches, and stifles a yawn. I'll go read. I'll go read tonight, he offers. Carol sees that he'd likely fall asleep before Lizzie if he tried. I got it, she insists. Looks like you had a long week. I'm missing a quote there. I don't know why it didn't flag that. Oh, you see how it's like I get this too, where previous versions the quotations are in different places, and I've got a feature in here. Let's see, is it under edit or is it under document? Convert? Nope. Edit. Let me bring this over here. Edit. Transformations. Convert quotes. Smart quotes convert quotes to straight quotes. So I'm going to convert all my quotes to straight quotes. And that makes that a lot easier. Thanks. Thanks, he says. She smiles, grateful that Dave is back to his old self, but wishing that he wouldn't push himself so hard with the driving. Keep the sofa warm for me. I'll be back, she promises. And this is a comma splice here. Yep. That. Dave smiles, then plops down on the sofa and lays an arm over the back of it, making a show of letting her know he's got a spot saved for her. By the time she returns, Dave is laid out on the sofa, is laid out on the cushions, laid out across the cushions, quietly snoring. She looks over at the TV and sees Netflix ready to start a movie that's been on their watch list for weeks. She turns off the TV, then covers him with the Afghan from the back of the sofa. She leans down and lays a feathery kiss on his forehead. I love you, Dave Fields, she whispers, then tiptoes up the stairs, turning off the lights behind her. I love you too, Carol Fields. I love you too, Carol Fields, he answers a few moments later. She pauses, but doesn't look back. Instead, she smiles and leaves him to fall into his richly deserved slumber. Okay. All right, let's see what we're doing here. Tell you what we're doing here. We're calling it a night. All right. Yeah, I am just yawning way too much right now, so we'll pick this up tomorrow. I'll probably have the audio fixed, and we'll maybe continue working on that because I want to drop that remastered story on Thursday. So tomorrow is Wednesday. Yeah, so if I can get the finished remastering it on Wednesday night, uh, drop it on Thursday, and then I'm gonna work on the next story, which is Leap, and that should be ready by the weekend to record, and then I'll do another remastered. So hopefully over the next couple of weeks, I will be able to do that sequence of story remastered while I finish this book until I can get the audio version of that going. So the key there is getting uh, what did I say? The podcast episodes out more than one a week. And the reason for that is that helps your downloads, right? Let me show you my Castos here. Castos. Take a look at the stats. Ooh. So I'm up to 4,351 downloads for 90 days. I want to get that to 5,000 before the end of the year. But you can see here where I downloaded 2 episodes, um, in a couple of days. This was actually 3, I think. Let's see, this one, 133. Okay, good. So I dropped a new episode today and I got 133 downloads. That's pretty good. That's about average for the last month and a half. Before that, it was under 120, about 115, and then before that, it was like under 100. So for a long time, I was dropping new episodes. I would get, if I was lucky, 80 to 90 downloads on that day, which gives you a good idea of how many subscribers you have, right? Because hopefully they've got their app set to automatically down your episode when it drops. So you get that download and you can see how many subscribers you have. So right now, I can pretty much count on having at least 130 subscribers. Now that's not completely true because it's not a one-to-one thing. It's not just episodes of the latest podcast. In fact, I can see which episode it was. Let's go here and take a look at episodes for choose a date range. And we're going to go Monday to Tuesday. And here I can see, okay, I got 104 downloads for Dreams of Her, 94 for Between the Covers Jody, and 68 for any. So these are the ones that I dropped that day before. So let me actually see if I can change this to 17 to 17. Just the one day. So there we go. So now I can see I got 104 downloads of Dreams of Her. So that's probably a good indication of the level of subscriptions, but it's not all the subscriptions because not everybody is going to have it set to auto download. Once I do this over a couple of days, I'll be able to see how many downloads I get on that, and that's going to show up more accurately up here in the chartable. And it doesn't sound like a lot, does it? 103, 120, 133. But in the world of starting a podcast, that's pretty good. Most people are still struggling to get dozens of downloads for their episodes. So here I can see there's Dreams of Her. It just kicked off right there. And Really Good Day Part 24 had a good run there. Really Good Day Part 23. And then here's the Between the Covers, and the Garden of Eden is right there too. So uh, we get to see this basically. I come here to episodes. And this is usually old data too. It doesn't quite catch up. But here we go. Dreams of Her downloads 106, but I can see that uh, oh, these ones didn't get as much. That's interesting. I wonder if it's because I downloaded them on the same day. But I can see here, like see the downloads for these other ones here are in the 150s, 130s. So that gives me a good idea of how many there are. I'm wondering, this was I think during the yeah, 9-5. This was during the Printers Row Lit Fest. So probably a lot of these are people coming in and just checking out the podcast. Maybe it's set to download the last 5 or something like that. So we get that. So, but this is sort of averaging up here, giving me what my current thing is. So I keep on pushing that, right? So when I was at the paranormal conference, I was pushing the podcast. Here, take this playlist, try it out, see what it's like. And if I can get 5 or 10 subscriptions per event, that's awesome, right? I do. Let's see if I do 5 events till the end of the year. That's another possibly 50 to 100 subscribers. That doubles my downloads almost. And that gets me where I want to go. Because right now it's mostly not advertising, but I'm posting on X, I'm posting on Facebook, I'm posting on Instagram, and hoping that people see it and give me, what I need. But The last 30 days listens over the last 30 days is 1,697. Good. When this gets up to 2,000, I'll be very impressed. That'll be cool. But the point is that if I can do 2 episodes a week, that's gonna bump up my average, and that's what I need to do. I need to get those numbers up because that's what counts on the ratings, the charting, as you saw. So, even if I do a rerun here, that still counts as a download. That still counts as people interacting with my podcast. So it's a interesting game to play. We'll see what's happening here. The Spotify listens are way up too. So 248 plus this, so I'm over 4,500, 4,600. So that's pretty good for the combined, but I'm looking at this number. If this number can get over 5,000, that'd be awesome because this is including the Apple Podcasts. All right, and then this is some premium thing on Castos I'm not going to pay for. I'm not 100% satisfied with their service, but what they do have that I like is their API, where I can programmatically send the stuff there. So when I come here to my Podomatic, I can actually, hey Barb, thanks for reposting that. I can control my podcast here and interact with the Castos and send information over there. Why is this not zooming out? There it is. Okay. So there we go. So I've got this app. I got to make some tweaks to it. There's a couple things I need to do, but yeah, it's really cool. Every new episode I put here is going to have this little post theme ad for Jody Sperling's story. So again, if you are a writer and you have a story you think would fit well in my podcast, send it. Let's talk. Try it out. If it works, then I will record it and we'll promote it. We'll do an interview, put an ad for your other books in my podcast for a month, pay you, put you on IMDb. Awesome deal. My hope is that then that, you'll share this on your mailing list. I'll get more listeners. You'll get more listeners from my people. So we'll sort of cross pollinate in that regard. All right. That's enough. I went way past what I was planning to, but there we go. All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow. We'll see what's happening then. Bye.